The crystalline throne room of Ethamore stretched impossibly high, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into a luminescent mist that pulsed with the collective consciousness of 1,000 worlds. Orla stood among the delegation of supplicants, her posture rigid as steel while every other species present to insectoid Kravix, the ethereal lumina. The towering Goroth warriors bent their bodies in submission before Queen Salandra VII. Jackson, observed from his position near, bad the atmospheric processes. His human eyes the only ones that remained level, fixed not on the floor but on the monarch herself. The translucent crown upon her head refracted light into impossible spectrums, each color representing a dimension of authority that humans had only theorized existed. Her forearms rested upon crystalline armrests, her skin shifting between states of matter as if reality itself couldn't quite contain her. The Terran delegation, the Queen's voice emanated not from her mouth, but from the very architecture surrounding them, a sound that bypassed ears and resonated directly in the consciousness of every being present. You stand in the court of infinite recursion, where civilizations far older than yours have learned humility. Orla's jaw tightened. She had been chosen for this mission precisely because of her unwavering nature, her doctorate in xenopolitical relations, and her absolute refusal to compromise human dignity. Beside her, Ambassador Threnkai of the Luminari beings of pure energy who had bent themselves into submissive spirals whispered urgently through his translation device. Human Orla, you endanger us all. The Queen does not tolerate disrespect. But Jackson remained unmoved, his gaze steady. He had studied the histories that Earth's deep space archaeologists had uncovered. He knew what the other species had forgotten or chosen to ignore, that submission had not earned them protection, but rather perpetual servitude. Queen Salandra's attention fixed upon him, and the temperature in the throne room dropped to near absolute zero before erupting into plasma heat. It was a display meant to demonstrate mastery over fundamental forces, a reminder that she could unmake any species with a thought. The male does not bow, she observed, her tone carrying the weight of collapsing stars. Does he not understand the fate of the predecessor civilizations? The architects who thought themselves our equals now exist only as warnings etched in neutron stars. Jackson stepped forward, and Orla felt her heart hammer against her ribs. They had discussed this possibility, but theory paled against the reality of facing a post-singular entity who had consumed entire galaxies to fuel her ascension. Your Majesty, Jackson's voice was steady, amplified by the translation matrix to reach every corner of the vast chamber. I understand perfectly. I've read the histories, the true histories, not the sanitized versions your archivists distribute. A murmur rippled through the assembled species. Several Goroth warriors shifted nervously, their battle-scarred carapaces clicking in distress. The architects didn't fall because they refused to bow, Jackson continued, taking another step forward. Orla moved with him. Her own refusal to submit now joined with his in a unified front. They fell because they bowed first and fought second. They gave you their dignity in exchange for promises of protection, and by the time they realized the cost, they had forgotten how to stand. The Queen's form solidified, coalescing into something almost humanoid, but wrong in ways that made the hindbrain scream warnings about apex predators and cosmic horror. You dare. I dare because humanity learned a different lesson, Jackson interrupted. And the fact that he had cut off a being who could rewrite reality itself sent shockwaves through the assembly. We nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times over. Nuclear fire, ecological collapse, artificial intelligence that turned against us, nanoplogs that rewrote our genetic code. We stood at the brink of extinction so many times that we lost count. Orla picked up the thread, her voice joining his. And each time we survived not through submission but through defiance. We defied entropy itself when we learned to manipulate quantum foam. We defied isolation when we tore open wormholes with mathematics that shouldn't work but do because we refused to accept that faster-than-light travel was impossible. We defied death itself, Jackson said, gesturing to his own body. I am 347 years old, Your Majesty. I have died twice, once to a stellar radiation burst, once when my shuttle's life support failed, and each time my crew refused to let me go. They rebuilt me, neuron by neuron, memory by memory, because humans don't bow to inevitability. The Queen rose from her throne, her form expanding until she filled the chamber like a living storm. The other species prostrated themselves even further, some crying out in terror, but Orla and Jackson stood firm, their spines straight, their eyes locked on the cosmic entity before them. You threaten me. The Queen's voice was thunder and whisper simultaneously. I, who have existed since your sun was a cloud of hydrogen, I who watched your world form from stellar debris. No, Ola said quietly, but her voice carried. We're offering you something none of these other species can. Equals, not servants who bow out of fear, but allies who stand because they choose to. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the ambient hum of the station's power systems seemed to hold their breath. Then Queen Salandra laughed, a sound that began as a low rumble and built into something that resonated across dimensions, shaking the foundations of Ithamore Station itself. The assembled species looked up in confusion and terror, but Orla saw something in the Queen's multifaceted eyes that hadn't been there before. Respect. 5 billion years, the Queen said, her voice now almost conversational, and you are the first to understand. I have been alone among subjects and servants, surrounded by worship but empty of companionship. She descended from her throne, shrinking to merely twice human height. The others bow because they have forgotten that I too was once small, that I too fought against the dying of the light. She extended one crystalline hand toward Jackson, then another toward Orla. Perhaps, she said, and there was something almost like hope in her ancient voice. It is time I remembered what it means to stand with someone rather than above them. As Jackson reached out to clasp the offered hand, he smiled. We have a saying on Earth, Your Majesty, those who stand for nothing will fall for anything. Then let us stand together, Queen Salandra replied, and see what wonders we might accomplish. And throughout the crystalline throne room, beings who had bowed for millennia began hesitantly to raise their heads.